1 week. That's what the FBI is being told they have to conduct a supplemental investigation into the shocking allegations against Judge Kavanaugh. Big turn of events that unfolded in the final minutes before a critical vote this afternoon that could have set the stage for Kavanaugh's swift confirmation. Not now. So it seems it was all set in motion after Republican Senator Jeff Flake, who was seen as a swing vote, announced he was a yes on Kavanaugh, delighting Republicans, crushing the hopes of Democrats. But then, this twist. Senator Flake stepped into an elevator at the U.S. Capitol, was suddenly confronted by two women who identified themselves as victims of sexual assault. Take a look.
Look at me when I'm talking to you. You're telling me that my assault doesn't matter, that what happened to me doesn't matter, and that you're going to let people who do these things into power. That's what you're telling me when you vote for him.
What an amazing turn of events. It looked in that elevator like Flake really couldn't make eye contact. He was looking down. I didn't know if he was trying to push the button to close the door or whatever. They were standing in the way. It wouldn't happen. It looked like he was doing everything he could to avoid the situation. But then, not long after, he would be the man of the moment. As senators delivered their final speeches in the committee before the vote, Senator Flake rose from his chair. Here's the scene. Walks toward the back of the room, taps Chris Coons. I didn't know if they were going out there to talk or throw down. And then there was chit-chat. Something's happening. Something's happening. Soon, Flake returns and turned everything upside down. Here's a moment.
I think it would be proper to delay the floor vote for up to, but not more than 1 week, in order to let the FBI continue to do an investigation limited in time and scope to the current allegations that are there.
We're going to get into, well, what does that mean? What happened? But how it happened, that we can get straight from the source. Democrat from Delaware, Senator Chris Coons, joins us now. I know you were at a town hall tonight. I know you wanted to go and check in with your people and see what they want in this situation. But boy, when I talked to you last night, and when I talked to you this morning, you were crestfallen. You were like, nothing good can happen in this situation. And then, what happened?
Well, Chris, I'm here at the Delaware City Fire Company Hall, where we just finished a robust town hall. Several hundred Delawareans came out with a wide range of views about Dr. Ford's allegations about Judge Kavanaugh. But I want to start by saying how grateful I am to my friend, Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, for acting on his concerns. He's heard, just as I have, here tonight as well as throughout yesterday. I've heard from a lot of survivors of sexual abuse who've come forward with their stories. And I think it was hard for anyone to listen to Dr. Ford testify yesterday for hours and not come away with some doubt, with some concern. It was also hard to listen to Judge Kavanaugh and not hear the pain that this has caused his family and his categorical denial of the allegations against him. Jeff, Senator Flake conveyed to me that he really still had doubts and that he was listening to the argument that I and others were making, that we should take 1 week for a limited in scope and duration further background investigation.
All right, so Senator,
because,
take
as
me
you
through
pointed
it.
out in the opening, there's a few things that we could get into that might really help.
Well, we're definitely going to get into it. But I don't want to leave the moment because we don't see this. You know, we don't see this on like mundane stuff, you know, like budget stuff where you guys should be finding common ground. It looks like people are trying to find common enemies. But on something like this, so polarizing. So Flake says he's a yes. They come at him in the elevator, and he seems hurt by that, and he has a reputation for being a sensitive person, that he feels deeply, he processes things. You know, not every man does, but he has a reputation for that. I watched that scene in the elevator, and I was like, oh, he can't wait to get out of here. He just wants to cast his vote and be done with it. Boy, was I wrong. When he tapped you on the shoulder and said, let's go outside, what did you think was going to happen, and what did happen?
Well, I frankly thought that we were going to go in the ante room and just have a conversation about how, while we respect each other as senators and hope to remain friends, that this was a pretty bitter moment for both of us, because each of us is on the other side of what ought to happen with Judge Kavanaugh. I was so encouraged when he said to me, you know, Chris, this whole thing is tearing our country apart, and we have to do something we have to do something to show that we can hear each other, and that the argument that you're making, if we can find a way to set the parameters right, is something that we ought to consider doing. 1 week, not indefinite, not every possible allegation. The allegations in front of us right now. Will you work with me on that? Can you get some commitment out of Senator Feinstein that that will be the scope of this? And it started a conversation, and as you noticed, the two of us were back there talking for a few minutes, and then a second senator, and then a third senator, and a fourth senator came back, and ultimately we had virtually the whole committee back there having a very vigorous argument.
So how did it unfold?
Things that struck both.
So how did it unfold? When you heard that, you said you were encouraged. I think you're underselling it. You must have been in some mild state of shock that it was going that way after the way it seemed in that room. But when they started coming over,
that's right.
How easy was it for you to get Feinstein and other people on both sides of the ball to be okay with this?
Exceptionally difficult, because frankly, some of the sharpest partisans on the committee came back and really leaned on Senator Flake very hard to say this is ridiculous, this process is over, the FBI has closed the investigation, there's absolutely nothing for them to investigate. And there were others who were arguing forcefully the other side, and then accusations started going back and forth about what Democrats were really trying to do, what Republicans were really trying to do.
How did Flake take
Chris, there were a couple of really encouraging moments.
How did Flake deal with that kind of
Flake
pressure?
was very stoic. You know, you saw the result, which was that he came out, and stood firm. You know, this really, frankly, is all hanging on his willingness.
Yeah.
He voted to move forward with the committee process, to show good faith with his caucus. But at the end of the day, what will keep this week a week is his willingness and several other undecided senators to be clear that they're not going to vote for cloture and they're not going to vote for Kavanaugh until we get the report back from the FBI.
All right, I want to get into the details
Chris,
of it. I want to get into the details of it, but just in terms of your time in there, and look, you're known as a bridge builder. You're known as, you'll work. I mean, the Senate's supposed to be about that, but you have a good reputation with people about, you're someone you can work with on things. Did you ever imagine that in this disconnected a scene, because I mean, we were just sitting, shoulder to shoulder, 24 hours ago having this conversation, and it was like, what a horrible day. Somebody's not telling the truth when you listen to these two people and their testimony, and there's very little interest in figuring out who that is. That's where we were 24 hours ago. Have you ever had anything like this happen before on something that was so divisive that in the critical moment, when the side with the leverage was about to win, it was someone from their side who said, I'm not going to win at all costs. I'm going to win the right way. We're going to do this out of fairness.
I'll tell you, Chris, I can think of several instances over the last 8 years where on the biggest issues, the tax package, the tax break, changing the rules of the filibuster, changing some other things that have been important changes in the Senate, a group of us have come together, tried to work out a bipartisan solution, and often failed. It is very difficult. The partisanship and the division, the pressures that are brought to bear on senators make it very hard to come to reasonable solutions. The last time that a group of us were meeting about the Supreme Court and the filibuster rule, it was in John McCain's office, and he was the one who pulled together a dozen of us. As you know, earlier this year, a group of us tried to find a centrist solution on Dreamers and providing more funding for border security, the president's requirements. It is very difficult in this environment to do anything bipartisan, Chris.
So that's what made this so exceptional today. And, good on you and Flake for getting the people's work done in the name of fairness. To the judge also, if they come back in a week and they say, look, we tracked this stuff down, nothing impresses us in terms of being corroborative. We could never make a case on this for what that's worth. Good for him to have that so that there's no stain on him if he does get confirmed. So now let's talk about what this is. 1 week, Christopher Wray's got to be okay with that, a new name injected into this situation. He could be advised. I mean, all the protocols, but for the audience, you don't just tell him what to do. He's got to want to do it.
Correct.
1 week. Now, that's all about, well, what are you asking him to do? Everybody says, well, Anita Hill, well, that was one thing. It was just going on. There was a limited scope of people that they could talk to. Here, you could slice this a lot of different ways. So how do you decide? Let's put up the statement for the audience about what this is being called, this supplemental FBI background investigation. So it's not a new investigation. It's not a criminal investigation. Current credible allegations. Which are those? And whom do they reach out to? What do you know?
Well, Chris, let me be clear. As you know, the FBI does not take direction from me. They take direction from Chris Wray, the FBI director, and from the White House. It is an executive branch agency. So I can talk about what I hope they will do, what I think would be reasonable for them to do, but I am not able to direct them in any way.
Understood.
I would think if they take up a supplemental background investigation, they would test the allegations made by Dr. Ford.
Just
They
Ford?
would question some of the folks, and they would question some of the folks who've already come forward in the public and made statements about Judge Kavanaugh. So, for example, you were talking at the opening of the show about the credibility of his categorical denial that he's ever had a night that he can't remember from drinking. There's already several folks who've come forward, college classmates, a college roommate, acquaintances, to say that's not true. We were with him, we've got evidence. And there's obviously a list of folks who are classmates or friends who've come forward to say we support Judge Kavanaugh and we support his characterization. So I think there is a fairly ready list of people.
What about Ramirez and Swetnick?
Obviously, when I think the statement made here was all credible allegations. So there's a number of allegations made public where there are sworn statements in front of the committee. I think that's what ought to be the first roadmap for the FBI, is to look into those allegations that are in front of us. There are many potential other allegations, and I would assume the FBI could make some quick decisions about which of them fall into the category of credible or not. The central issue that got us to this moment, Chris, of course, was Dr. Ford's testimony in front of the committee. It was the fact that by the end of the time she testified, there were real doubts, there were concerns on the part of several senators on and off committee who were left uncomfortable with the idea that we would push forward with Judge Kavanaugh's nomination without any further investigation of her allegations. So I do think that's really central to this. Look, it's entirely possible that a week from now, Judge Kavanaugh will still be confirmed. It's possible that he will be cleared of some of these allegations or all of them. It's possible that further evidence corroborating Dr. Ford's allegations may be uncovered. What I hope the folks watching tonight take from this is that we are hearing those folks who've come forward with allegations of sexual assault, that we are respecting them and investigating their allegations, and that we're trying to add a bipartisan commitment to due process to what was a pretty rough and tumble, pretty divisive partisan process here so far. When Jeff Flake said to me, Chris, this thing is tearing our country apart, what I embraced was his spirit of trying to work together to get back to a sense of what a fair hearing would look like.